Hey everyone, welcome to Creatives Processing. I'm Sarah Mulligan Williams, and today I'm talking with Joan LeMay, and I am so excited about this one. I met Joan a few years ago, pre-pandemic in Portland, and I've been following her work ever since. Her paintings are really bold, they use this gorgeous use of color, and she has this punk rock attitude that I just find so fun. She's a painter, she's a musician, she's a former music publicist. Honestly, it feels like she's done everything, and that punk rock background really influences how she creates art and what art means to her. She's the coolest. We talk about juggling multiple creative pursuits, her use of color and how she thinks about choosing it, how her process changes between commercial portraits and personal work, and the messy reality of pricing your work. We also get into some vulnerable territory, working with and not against her ADHD, what it actually means for her to persevere as a working artist, and her open heart surgery that she had in 2024. So settle in, here's my conversation with Joan LeMay.
Hello, how are you? I'm so thankful to be here. Thank you for having me on. My name's Joan LeMay. I'm a painter. I always say I end up telling people I'm a painter and then doing a painting motion with my hand. I don't know why, but I'm a painter, a visual artist. I am a writer. I hesitate to say I'm a musician. I play music, and I'm currently living in Brooklyn, New York. There's so much to talk about, so much, and that's part of what's so great about your podcast is allowing for that space to talk about every part of the process, because being an artist, particularly when you're a visual artist, it's a really solitary pursuit. A lot of it is anyway. So it's good to externalize on that.
Yeah. So you've had this fascinating dual career as a music publicist. You know, you ran your own firm for it was Riot Act, right?
Yeah.
Riot
Yeah.
Act for a little over 8 years, but you were
Mhm.
also being a practicing artist at that time. So how did you navigate those two identities for so many years?
I think I didn't. That's such a good question, and it's making me think back to what my sense of identity was during those years, and I think it was just that I identified with everything that I did. I have always been a person who's done a lot of things. I've always been a juggler. I've got very pronounced ADHD, which might become apparent in this interview as I bounce around the topic.
Yeah, once I start getting going too, we're gonna bounce around quite a bit. So
Fantastic.
resonates.
Ping pong, man. But I was a music kid. It all kind of, the love of music and the love of art and the love of theater and film and blah 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 blah. It all comes, from the same place. And when I was a kid, I got into punk rock when I was early in high school, and it just really saved me and gave me I'm trying to not being as articulate as I'd like to be. It gave me really something to hold on to. It gave me something to identify with. I was a weird kid in Katy, Texas, and and I was angry. I was upset about a lot of things, and it just music was a window to the wider world.
What was
And
that first punk band that piqued your interest?
oh God, I don't even know. I think weirdly, I actually want to say maybe Fugazi, which is a cool answer to give, but
Totally,
the way
but
that I got,
accurate.
yeah, and the way that I got to Fugazi is not cool, because I was it's the '90s, and I was a young teenager. I was a Pearl Jam fan, and Eddie Vedder was talking about Fugazi in an interview on the radio, and I was taking notes and wrote and looked them up and got repeater and whatever. I had friends. I had some friends that had older brothers, and we would go into their rooms and look at their tapes. This is before the internet. This is you would learn about bands through mixtapes. So I learned about Bikini Kill through mixtape. I learned about the Subhumans through mixtape. I learned about 7 Seconds through mixtape. I learned, it was a really organic '90s kid process, and I started a fanzine when I was 14 called Out of Order, and I had a fake ID, and I interviewed bands that came through town. There was a club called Fitzgerald's in Houston. The upstairs was Fitzgerald's. The downstairs was Zelda's. Zelda's was always all ages. Fitzgerald's was sometimes all ages, sometimes not. Didn't matter. I had my fake ID, and for whatever reason, the people there were like, "Sure, she can come in," because I know I looked
Yeah.
like a baby. But I was really I had no fear around asking people to talk to me, and I had no there was nothing in my mind that made me think, oh, this person isn't going to want to talk to me. They're not going to da 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 da. And sure enough, I interviewed Milo from the Descendants and Kelly Deal, and all these people gave me the time of day. I think because I was this, obviously lost looking kid hanging outside the club, like when I interviewed you for my fanzine. And I would show up, hours before doors, waiting for load in, and I would catch people and do that. And through that, I bought at the record stores I went to in Houston, I bought copies of Maximum Rock and Roll and Profane Existence, and there were always ads in the back for other fanzines, and you could distribute your zine that way, and I did. And I consigned copies at all the record stores in Houston and in Austin, and then I drove I started driving back and forth between Houston and Chicago a lot, starting around when I was 16, I would say, and I would bring the zine there, and I ran some programs where I sent a bunch of them to various prisons, and as part of a prison library program, and started a pen pal program with prisoners. Again, I'm a 15-year-old girl. I don't have a concept of that, so that's like fucked up. I'm realizing as I'm saying it loud, but my parents had no idea. Nobody cared. Nobody knew. But I was doing all these things. I say that to say in making the fanzine, it was making something, and I drew stuff for the zine, and I made flyers for bands, and I eventually started putting on shows and making flyers, and I just always was curious, and I was always interactive, and I always wanted to be making something and doing something because it made me feel like it made me able to see myself. It made me feel like I had a purpose on this earth, that I was doing something.
If I
So
could interject with that, I mean, I feel like a big part of punk is like, it's not just the music, but it's also the community around it. So you're
yeah,
also creating things like art can be such a solitary pursuit, but you're creating it for something that has a larger community around it.
Mhm.
So did you have compatriots in this
Oh,
that you were like collaborating with? Yeah.
totally. Yeah, I had there were a bunch of different folks making zines. I had this one friend named Anthony, and he had a really cool mom, and she let us. He lived in Houston proper, and she would bring us to her office after office hours, and we would make copies of our zine on her office copier. And he had a zine. There was a whole universe of people making things. There was a whole community of people playing in bands. There was a whole community of people who went to shows all the time, which it's that way, thank God, still everywhere. There are still people playing music. There are still scenes. There is still community, and that is more important than ever. And I'm totally jumping around, but it's a huge thing for me now. I started playing in bands again after not doing so for like 20 years. I'm in two bands now. One is called Viennetta, and the other is called Bull Thieves. And for the past year, really.
Is Viennetta named after the 90s
Oh, yeah.
dessert?
You know that it is.
Yes.
Yep.
Oh, absolutely.
Uh-huh.
That was like height of luxury. I was allergic to dairy as a kid, and so was my brother. So we always had we had to go to like this specialty health food store that sold rice stream. So like we never had ice cream in the house, but seeing those Viennetta commercials was like, that's luxury, man. That is dessert.
Oh yeah, it was dessert, but it was also like shitty Briars. It was the same way. It was the moment in time where uh, Fancy Feast and Grey Poupon were a thing in advertising, where it was like, we'll take some cat food, some mustard, and like a log of ice cream and try and sell it as, operatic.
What
But anyway,
prompted the move to start playing music again?
what prompted the move to start playing music again, principally, and I principally was just being asked. So I have this friend named Jenny Kroik, who's an incredible illustrator. She's an illustrator for the New Yorker Magazine and a bunch of other places. And she told me that she'd been playing music with this other woman who was also named Joan. And she knew that I had played, and the three of us started playing together. And then Jenny went off to do some other things. And Joan and I, the two Joans, brought in this woman named JB Rote, who's an actor, and we started playing together and just kept doing it. And then at a certain point, my very best friend in the whole wide world, who is Mr. Lance Scott Walker, who is an incredible author and musician and scholar and a million other things. He has had a project called Bull Thieves for like 20 years or something, and maybe not 20 years. It hasn't been 20 years. How long has it been? He's going to correct me. This is part of our friendship, is he always remembers everything, and I'm like, it's been 5 minutes, and he's like, it's been 3 years.
Every friendship needs that balance. Yeah.
Yeah. But he asked me to be in his project, and so I had kind of started to dabble in doing that, and really relearning / learning bass, which was not my primary instrument before, for this. And then last year I had open heart surgery. I had an ascending aortic aneurysm, and it was going to explode, and I was going to die. So I had that happen, and that took up really, I would say, like 9 months of my last year, more or less. And coming out of something like that really, makes one want to seize the day, and you realize that not realize that life is precious. I already knew that life was precious, but it can give you a more intense sense of the limited amount of time that we all actually have. And I felt this urge also to kind of not only make up for lost time, but I felt the need to like live triple, which has sometimes, that instinct has sometimes served me and sometimes it has not. I've definitely been trying, around to the one of the original topics. I've definitely been trying to cram like 5 lives into one this year, which is not particularly new for me, but it's more pronounced this year. More. It's an interesting. I've got a lot of interesting puzzles to solve in terms of balance with all of it.
Yeah. Can you tell me a little bit about how, playing music, being a visual artist, how do these creative outlets feed or influence each other? Or I would imagine you don't try to keep them separate because you are an artist with a capital A and all of these things, they are a part of you. So keeping them separate wouldn't, I don't know, it just doesn't seem that's the way that you would do it.
Yeah. I don't keep them separate. I love making flyers. To me, flyers and album art, and I've made album art for people for probably 15 years or so. I did a cover for Ben Gibbard's solo record, Former Lives. I've been really lucky to get to make a lot of cover art for folks, and I've got a commission that I need to get to now that is some more cover art. But that aspect of it, the visual representation of music has been just kind of a through line for me, for sure. What has been interesting and difficult this year is balancing my energy between the two, because I think especially because I not only decided to be in one band, but 2 bands, and both bands are active and both bands are recording. I'm going on tour in like a week. We're playing shows. I've been playing a couple of shows a month, and then there are rehearsals for that. And then I also have a part-time job because I need money, and it's a lot to figure out. And I think that's always part of the challenge when you're somebody who does a lot of stuff and wants to do a lot of stuff simultaneously, is recognizing your own limits and navigating those. And it's never something that you actually figure out. Everything is always fluid. Things are, we're all like sponges. We need to soak up. We need to have time to soak up a lot of life. And then once we're really full, we need to have time to squeeze all of that out of us in the form of whatever we're making. And then that gives us room to be able to soak things up again. And sometimes in that cycle, I will get really caught in the squeezing out and be exhausted to soak things up. So in painting this year, I have not been as active as I would like to be, because and I've had to be real about that, because it just hasn't been possible with the other things that I've chosen to foreground this year. I also just finished up. Well, I still have 4 paintings that I'm going to add on. But Alex Pappademas and I just finished up our follow up to Quantum Criminals, and it's a book about the Grateful Dead.
I can't wait to buy that for my dad and my uncle and so many people in my lives.
I hope that everybody buys it for their dad, their uncle, and so many people in their lives. It is truly mind-blowingly brilliant writing from Alex, and I can say that when our division of labor, I do the paintings and he writes, and we ideate together. But that's what it is. So I can really shout from the rooftops about the brilliance of the manuscript without being full of myself. It's about so much more than the Grateful Dead. It's about so much more than even American culture through the 60s, 70s, 80s. It's really I'm very, very excited to see it continue to take shape. But that it's our first book for Random House, which is the biggest publisher in the world, which is bananas. So the time and energy spent in making the whatever it is 110 paintings for that was really a lot, and I went into the process of making this book completely differently than the last one, and the paintings are much more labor intensive this time.
Let's dive into that. I'm so curious because like it's split between Alex's writing and your your paintings of like going back to the Steely Dan book, which I listened to some of the Dan leading up to our call this morning just to get myself in the headspace,
I love that.
But I want to know like where how did you approach the collaboration? Had you collaborated before? Where did the idea come from? And like walk me through what was it like collaborating with each other? Did you work separately? Were you bouncing ideas off of each other for like which of Steely Dan's song characters to illustrate? Tell me like from start to finish. I want to know everything.
Yeah, so it started back to fanzines. It started as a fanzine during the pandemic. I had started to make a couple of zines called Mug Club, wherein I asked people, I asked people to send me pictures of their favorite mug and a story about it because we were all stuck indoors. And so it was it was like a riff on, thematic riff on Giorgio Morandi's work where he painted the same thing 9 million times. That's part of my whole brain thing too.
And I'm holding a mug here,
Yes.
created by my dear friend Heather Gray, who is a creative director and a mentor, and I adore her. And I love that my cabinet is just filled with mugs gifted to me from people. It's like it contains them. It's just a little reminder of love and friendship. Oh, I love your mug.
Thank you. I'm going to plug now. This mug I did as a painting trade with a wonderful ceramicist who works as Hay Moon Ceramics out of Austin, Texas. And everybody should buy things from her. It has a snake worm on it, and I use it every day, and I love it. So, yes. Cheers. Cheers to you. I've got some weird watery instant coffee in here. It's great.
Yeah, I have like an oat milk coffee blend here that I can either have it like piping hot or absolutely freezing, and it's like somewhere in the middle. And I'm like, I'm just going to keep on drinking it, even though it's not. It's neither correct temperature.
Yeah, it's tough. It's a process, man. So anyway, so I started making Mug Club because we were all stuck inside our homes, and so it was kind of a meditation on what that is, what all of our stuff means to us, blah, blah. made two of those, and then I wanted to take a break from that format and thought, what else do I want to make a fanzine about? And Steely Dan has always been my favorite band. It's always my pat answer to who is your favorite band? What is your favorite band? That's a complex
When
question.
did you become a Steely Dan fan? Because I mean, I've only recently started to dive into it, and I just like started scratching the surface, and it's just kind of amazing like how ubiquitous their music is. Like even if you don't know that's a Steely Dan song, you hear and you're like, oh no, I know this song.
Mm-hmm.
They've just been around forever, it feels like.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So my first musical memory is when I was 2, and my parents only had, you know, like a 4 or 5 inch stack of LPs, and there was a piece of furniture. The turntable was kind of up on a shelf, and I remember the first time, like I have a very clear sense memory of the first time that I was able to plop an LP onto the top of that thing, and it was "Can't Buy a Thrill." And I loved from the time it sounds crazy to say that I remember that from 2, but I do. And that was my favorite. And I think it was my favorite because there were bright colors on the front and I was a baby, but I just remember being very little and listening to that record over and over again. And it was something that was always, I didn't grow up in a house where like music was on. We'd listen to stuff in the car or whatever, but that was it. But I would take out records and listen to them myself, and until I was a teenager, really starting to buy my own stuff in a passionate way. Those were the records that I had to listen to, and it's a lifelong thing. So I was like, what can I make a fanzine about? And I thought Steely Dan, because there are a zillion named characters in their songs. There are a zillion session players there, and I'm primarily a portraitist, and so I wanted to do a big project that was people instead of objects, because I'd also just done made 2 fanzines that were about objects, and so that was where the idea was, and I only got so far as the cover and making the list of characters and players. And I got a call, and I posted about it on Instagram, and I got a call from my dear friend, the brilliant Jessica Hopper, who is an acquiring editor at the University of Texas Press, and also a brilliant director and producer. The new Lilith Fair documentary that is out now is hers. It's incredible, awesome. And everybody should watch it. Anyway, she called me and she said, "Joni, that's not a fanzine, that's a book." And I was like, "Wait, what now?" And so she had been in talks with Alex, who obviously brilliant for my money, the best music writer working today, the best culture writer working today, the smartest, the most insightful, the most creative. I'd known him loosely for decades because of having been a music publicist. But that's how we knew each other, was I would pitch him something and he'd be like, "Not today." And I'd be like, "Okay, thanks." He had been speaking with her about doing something on Steely Dan, but he didn't know what shape he wanted it to take. He didn't know. So with my format, Jessica put the 2 of us together and said, "Y'all are going to make a book." And I said, "Great." So all of a sudden, Alex and I had a book deal together, and we were both fucking thrilled, and started talking, and dreaming out what we wanted this thing to be, and that's how the process started. And you were asking earlier, did we, he lives in Los Angeles. I was in Portland at the time that I made the book, and we worked asynchronously for most of it. But then in the end chunk, we would have calls every Monday to get on track with as the manuscript was taking shape, having discussions, because I finished the paintings for that last book and for this book before reading the manuscript. So it's different than illustrating, where you read something and then you draw. He was working, I was working. We had made lists on, okay, this is what we want it to be, and then we both were like, show your hand, and then now there's a little zhuzhing of I really want to paint this person, whatever. But yeah, that's and we were just incredibly, it changed my life. It totally changed my life. We were right place, right time. And University of Texas Press did an incredible job. They're just the best. The publicist there, Joel Pinkney, is beyond phenomenal, I say, as somebody who was a publicist for 17 years. And we got press that I never would have dreamed of. We got multi-page spreads in the Atlantic. New York Times wrote about us multiple times. LA Times, we were on NPR, the whole gamut, and went on a book tour, and we were kind of swarmed by agents who wanted another one, and got a great agent, and he shopped us around, and all of the publishing houses were unanimous. He shopped us around with some various ideas we had for the next book that would fit that format. And everybody unanimously said they wanted something on the Grateful Dead. So we were like, okay, so we're doing a Dead book. And that's what brings us to where we are today with that.
And you had mentioned before, the process for the Grateful Dead book is different than what you did for the Steely Dan book. Can you talk about the differences? Like, was the process different out of necessity, out of maybe the publisher that you were working with, or it was just, lessons learned from doing it the first time and what adjustments you could make for the next one?
It was less about external. Like, Random House has been incredible, and they wanted us to do what we did before. And they've been so wonderful. They've been so supportive. They've been so enthusiastic. And so also we have required several extensions, partially because I had to get my chest cracked open and I wasn't able to paint for, it was that whole thing.
Of all reasons. I mean,
yeah,
I think you should get an extension.
Yeah, there was that. And I moved out of the country. Then I moved back to New York, and Alex became the culture editor of GQ, and that's a massive job. So we both, our lives both changed a lot between the making, like a lot between the making of the last book and now. And so just in terms of what my life logistically and personally has been, and my capacity, that it changed my process. And principally how it was different for me is that I went into this really not knowing much about the Dead, and it's going to be really interesting. This was my time to really dive in, and it's going to be really interesting talking about that more. As we don't have a publication date yet. I don't know when, hopefully sometime in 2026, I would think. But when the actual press cycle for that book starts, it's going to be interesting. us talking about that, because I know a lot of, Dead fans are really passionate people, just like Dan fans are really passionate people, and I can go toe to toe with Steely Dan nerds any day. I cannot with Dead nerds. Anybody's going to have me licked. I was more interested in I approached all these paintings and all this work from a new and curious kind of and fresh kind of standpoint. And I also, one thing that I did towards the beginning of the process was sought out models, which is something I didn't do for the Dan book, but in the spirit of the Dead, because in the spirit of having a big inclusive community, which is so much of what that band is about, is the culture around them. I wanted to have that be present in my paintings, so I sought out people who were fans to model for me as particular characters who I would then paint. So, there was a big process with that as well that was very different. I just made stuff up, and with the Dan book, I used myself as a model because it was also the pandemic, and so I would take pictures of myself, whatevering, and stick another head on my body or change my whatever. And so that was a very different thing.
Now, when you were working with models for this, because I'm between like the Dan and the Dead, like again, like lots of characters in their songs, and was it just the descriptions of these characters in the songs that were informing what the subjects look like, or was it coming from you? Were the subjects, especially with the Grateful Dead portraits, were those also being fed to from the fans themselves, like their interpretation of what that character would look like?
Partially, yeah. I mean, I would give folks instructions of like, can you look? It was like kind of like being a casting agent or something. Or I was like, can you look really pained? Can you look, because I would be illustrating a particular line, but in terms of the feel of like who do I paint? Who are the characters that fans want to see? Who's important? Alex was it. Alex made the list because he is a massive, very knowledgeable Dead fan. And so I took cues from him on who do I paint, what's your take on this character, what's the general vibe. So from talking with him, listening to the songs, looking at the lyrics, and then emailing people and asking them to basically give me a performance of some sort, and then taking those photographs and painting from those photographs. It was kind of a multi. It was a more in-depth research process for me because I was coming in fresh, and it's important to me that that I was coming to my own conclusion about who I thought these people were and what I thought they looked like, but that those ideas were also community informed, and that I wasn't totally off base and being a ding dong,
Yeah.
If that makes sense.
That's so interesting. I mean, when you're illustrating characters from songs rather than historical figures, real people in your commissions, how does your research and ideation process differ?
I think it was just all of that. I generally am a visual thinker, so all when I would read the lyrics, particularly, whether it was, with the Steely Dan book, I had a lot of images in my head already, generally, of kind of what these people might have been like, not necessarily what they specifically looked like. But there was, a predisposed something. And similarly, when I would read these lyrics, I would get kind of an impression of like, okay, this guy, this guy. Like the same way as when you read a book, you have a sort of half-baked idea in your head of how characters are. You just, at least I do. I form like there's a movie in my head that happens because that's just how I think. It's not like a grandiose. There's a movie in my head. It's just that's how I. I just think visually. So it was really that. And when I'm painting real people or historical figures, it's not that completely different. When I do commissions, which I have many that I need to get to right now, I will ask the patron to tell me about their family member, tell me about their pet, tell me, I want to know, and whatever information they choose to share with me is what I don't have questions that I really ask. I will just say, tell me. And what they tell me is what I will foreground. And that's what I will get my informational hit from, if you will, is because what the patron's first instinct is, in terms of what they want to share, I think always ends up being the thing that should most be reflected in the piece, if that makes sense.
Now, when you're talking with them, and I think this is a good segue into talking about your portrait commission work.
Yeah.
Hearing that, you say, tell me about the subject versus, you have a list of questions that you ask. Are these done? Is it done over email, a form? Do you have like a phone conversation or video conversation? So you're getting a bit of like how that person is thinking and communicating about them?
Most of the time it is email. Sometimes I'll get on the phone. If it's something that is, it depends on a number of factors. It depends on the time sensitivity of it. It depends on if the patron is somebody that I already know. I generally might know about this person, or I might know about, so it depends on a number of factors. Or a lot of the time I'll be out in the world having a conversation with somebody, and they're asking me about painting, and then they start talking about, my grandmother, she passed last year, or my best friend's birthday is coming up. I love her so much. She does this, and they'll start talking about the person, and then say, I'd really love to do a commission with you. And great. And then we email about it. But so it happens organically. I have a process in terms of, process pricing, timeline stuff. And I messed with that format this year to see, because you have to, it's important when you have a hunch that you should change things up, that you try some different things. And I changed how I'm communicating about commissions on my site and built this whole page with really a lot of information about it, and a lot of information about the process, and even a contract, because I used contracts my entire career as a publicist. I have rarely used contracts as a visual artist unless it's for a commercial project, which I do, illustrations for magazines, and if I'm making a painting for a company or something, or if there will be contract. There are instances in which things are written down by contract, but I have been a lot more casual about it. Anyway, I put all this stuff up on my site, and my inquiries completely died. Like, stuff just stopped. And
So that's so interesting because I want to know, like, what was the hunch that made you want to be more transparent and clear about your process, pricing, and everything? And because when you posted about that, I had already had you on my list of people to reach out to for the podcast. But once you posted that, I was like, oh, this is exactly the sort of shit that I want to talk about because it's
oh, nice.
being so transparent about it is, I mean, I'm not in the fine art world. I don't get fine art commission. So seeing a fine artist like yourself be so transparent about that, is that not the norm within that field?
I have no idea what is and what is not considered the norm, really, right now. And I'm not sure at this particular moment if there is necessarily a
Sure.
norm. But I had conversations with a few other painters and a few other illustrators, and they shared their processes with me. I've heard for years and years and years, like, why aren't you doing bigger ticket, larger scale commissions? I'm like, I would love to. I would absolutely love to. It just that hasn't happened. And I think part of why it hasn't happened, I put in quotes, is goes back to the thing we were talking about before, where I'm doing a lot of different stuff,
Yeah.
and and I want to do it all, but you can't do it all. So I think I there was one particular painter who was very generous with me and sent me she said, this is what's on my site. This is my slideshow that I send. She has a PowerPoint that she sends to clients. And she was like, just copy that and just, do it. And I was like, great, thanks, man. And I more or less did, but with the parameters I was already working with, with my information about what my rates are and what my timeline generally is, and all that stuff. But I think, I also have been in marketing in various ways for 90 million years. My day job is I work for a company called 20 by 200 that sells fine art prints and art objects. And I handle their social media, newsletters, and things like that. Thinking marketing wise and thinking business wise, because you have to. I think that the approach of forefronting a lot of information didn't work for me in my case, because it's not how I had previously done things, and the amount of information I shared was and is, because I still need to update my site, which I'm going to do, and change this out. I think it's too much information. I think it's overwhelming. I think you look at it and you're like, oh my God, this is a lot. This is because I'm laying out all the steps. I'm like, and then this happens, and then this happens, and then this happens. Because I wondered if it would be interesting or useful to people who are thinking about commissioning a piece to really understand how what the
Sure.
steps are, how it goes, all that stuff. But turns out it was my inquiries stopped completely.
Now, so prior to updating your site the way that it currently is, listing out the full process and
Mm-hmm.
the pricing tiers, would you, what did someone hiring you previously look like? Did you walk through that process with them one-on-one or like via emails? So like once they were like, yep, signed on, going to pay you, now you know what the process is.
It's just really previously in the way I've always done it, and the way that I'm doing it again is a really simple, just kind of straightforward human conversation. A lot of it comes through, the vast majority of it comes through Instagram, and people DMing me, and then me asking for their email address, and then I send them an email that outlines my process, pricing, and timeline. And I say, I want to hear about what you have in mind, what your concept is. We can talk about ideas, and I'll need photos from you that are in focus and have this, that, and the other going on. And then we can talk about size and substrate and all of that. And then, depending on the complexity, what my workload is, what the size is, then I can tell you what the timeline is. And the pricing structure is, right now, my 12 by 12s are this much, my 14 by 14s are this much, my 16 by 16s are this much. And if it's bigger than that, then we can go from there. But that's just a starting point. And then that's really enough information for folks to go, oh, okay. And understand, like, just the basics of what happens if they're doing commission, and then they'll write back and tell me, and then we go back and forth, and I answer questions, and I get the source material that I'm working from, and then do it up, and that, I think that just really human process, for whatever reason, is what is going to kind of keep working best for me. But it might totally, and is totally, not what works best for everybody. And right now, I think I talk to other painters and illustrators pretty, organically and regularly or whatever. And I know that everybody I talk to right now is having a very hard time.
I can imagine.
Yeah.
Do you think it's I would imagine it's a mix of where the economy is at. I think a big part of it would likely be the prevalence of automated tools where you can just plug in a couple of prompts and suddenly you have a custom portrait made of your loved one in 15 different artist styles to choose from based on whatever flavor you're looking for today. So the entire human aspect and the labor that goes into creating a beautiful piece of art it is continued to be, it was already undervalued to begin with, but continues to be devalued. And why wait for somebody to, why wait and why pay for somebody to do that when I can just, like, within 30 seconds have something for myself that's custom.
Yeah. I think that it is really the economy and the state of the world and the state of things. I think, I don't know anybody in America who isn't kind of, fighting off the instinct to really be living in a scarcity mindset. And I think it's really that their life is getting more and more and more expensive. The job market is really tough. And art is, at the end of the day, a luxury purchase. I don't, in terms of competition with AI, or competition with painters on Etsy who will make a small portrait for $30 or something like that. I don't actually see that as something that is impacting my level of stuff. And I don't mean level as in like I'm so great. It's just I think it's a different.
It's a different market.
It's a different market. It's a different person. Like there's, you know, I think the person who wants a pillow with their kid's face on it is different than the person who wants to pay $1,000 to have somebody whose art they connect with and who they're a fan of or whatever paint their child, or somebody who they have a personal connection with paint their child. I think there's, you know, every human artist has a story, and there's inherent value in the work because the work is being made by that artist. You know, it's the whole thing of like, I don't know. There's the Picasso's at a, I'm not fucking Picasso, but there's like Picasso's at a cafe, and they give him a check, they give him the bill, and he does just a little scribble on a napkin, and he's like, here, you know. Anybody else does that. I do that. If I go to a cafe and they give me a bill and I scribble on a napkin, I'm like, here. You know, they're going to tell me, fuck off, give me $40.
If you pay me. Yeah.
Right, exactly. But, you know, so there's the, you know, it's a whole other giant conversation. What is the value of art? What is the monetary value of art? What is blah, 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 blah. But I don't, you know, without going down that wormhole, I don't really see that customer being the same person as a patron who's really looking for a particular artist to make something that they're going to have forever, and really invest a lot of money into and wait for to have a hand in making. But I think, everybody I talk to is like, man, it's slow.
Yeah. But hearing before, you know, you've mentioned, got a couple commissions I got to work on, and I got to get to them. So who is buying your art now? Who is commissioning from you? Give me names. No.
There's one musician that I did a record cover for a couple months ago, and I'm doing this really complex record cover project for him now that involves making 8 or 9 different illustrations and painting a separate background. And it's almost like, remember those color forms toys from the 80s? Right, where there's the, you know, it's Snoopy and he's plastic and you put him on the plastic Snoopy background. It's going to be collaged in that sort of way. I'm making all the elements disparate so that the designer in Photoshop afterwards can move people around, or cut out and physically moved around on a piece and photographed, or there will be some different options there. So I'm working on that. I did a book cover that there may be a little bit more production work to do on for a writer named Corey Dubrawa. He's Portland. It's a book that is about Portland, and some of the songs that are most indicative of different times in Portland musical history.
Do you have a favorite Portland song?
Oh God, that's a good question. Maybe Quasi's "Bye Bye Blackbird" is the first thing that comes to mind. So we'll just say
I saw them last year open up for Built to Spill at the Fillmore. because
Yeah.
now I'm based in Oakland, so
Okay.
now I get to experience all the great like Bay Area venues. They were awesome, man. They were so great live.
They're the best. They're the best. Janet is a queen. And Janet is also doing pet portraits, and she does dog. I think she's been painting cats too, but I think primarily dogs on drum heads. And she's fucking amazing. And you can get, if you like, anybody who is a Janet Weiss fan should commission her to
Oh, that's
paint them.
awesome.
She's a mind blower. So yeah, but anyway, so I did that book cover. I have one person. I have two. One person that I have known personally for a while, and another person who's a stranger, where I'm doing family portraits for them of family members, and yeah, and the other things for the book. So there's, yeah, I'm very thankful that I do have some work
Yeah.
there, and I've got that. I start to stutter when I'm talking about it because my brain starts going through the different things that I'm juggling, which is a neat problem.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What makes a good commission client? Like when and how and if you involve them at all during your process. Like,
Mhm.
I mean, I think of with the work that I do, especially since it's client work. I'm checking in with stakeholders at some point during the process. Like, hey,
Mhm.
is this in line with your business's goals and such?
Mhm.
Do you involve your clients at all? Versus like commission versus if it's uh, so if it's like personal portrait commission versus musician for cover art versus book work.
It really it depends on what the project is. Right now, one of the things that I'm working on, I don't know why I didn't forefront this, but I'm doing. I don't know if you're a Kids in the Hall fan, the
Not
Canadian.
huge. I like it. It's they like I did. Maybe it was like I was a little bit too young
Uh
for it.
huh. Uh huh.
Yeah.
Anyway, Bruce McCullough from Kids in the Hall. I'm doing the cover for his upcoming comedy record, and we're collaborating a lot. Like that's a really intense collab and intense good. It's good intense Bruce, not bad. It's a really great collaborative process. Where he has a lot of really great, really funny ideas and really particular things that he wants me to get, and it's really important to me that I get them for him. So there's been a lot of posing this way, posing that way, having this outfit, having this other outfit. There's this character. Does this character do this or that or whatever? So there's a lot of sketches and back and forth with that. Other clients will just have a fully formed concept sometimes, and this is for album art or book art or what have you. They'll have a fully formed concept. We'll talk to make sure that we're on the same page about it. I'll ask questions, and then they'll be like, "Okay, go to town," and I'll do it and then turn it all in. And if it's sometimes for magazines, we'll have a involved ideation process. And
And
sometimes,
that's with sketches at that point before you
yeah,
actually go into
yep,
the
yep.
expensive materials, the painting. Like,
Mhm.
are there points where you've gone to that final step and then you get feedback that like this isn't what we were hoping for?
Oh God,
And I'm
yeah.
thinking about like all the sketching back and forth. Like, how do you scope for like rounds of revisions at that point?
I generally, and this gets back into when work is contracted, generally, if it's something where there are going to be sketches and revisions, then that's in the contract that, I'm only going to do 2 revisions. After that, I'm going to charge you this much more. I'm going to start charging for revisions. I don't do for a regular portrait commission. I don't do that back and forth, and I can only revise what I'm doing so much if I turn in the piece and the person's like, "Oh, can you move it a little to the left or something?" I can't. It's washed on paper. I can't do that.
In Photoshop.
Right. So it has to be, understood that what we've communicated. Now I'm making the piece, and the piece is going to you, and that is what it is. And different people work different ways, but for there have definitely been times that I've gotten deep into stuff and did not have contractual guardrails put in place, or it seemed difficult to navigate those things. There have been a few times that I've worked with ad agencies on things, and as is famously the case when you're working with an agency, you as the artist are the absolute lowest on the totem pole in that process. It's the agency and the client is changing things. And within that relationship too, there will be people at the agency that want one thing or another, and there will be client people who have conflicting ideas. And then if the big boss swoops in after not having paid attention to anything the whole process and says, "Oh, I need this to be orange," then it's due in an hour. And then it's like there are all of these different people, when a lot of folks are involved in something, that want to be stakeholders in an outcome, and that they'll throw in ideas or throw in their 2 cents because they want to feel like they've participated, or they want to demonstrate that they're participating to whoever the boss is or whatever. And it comes down when you're the artist, you're the one at the bottom being like, huh. So I've learned my lesson with that, and but I learned it the hard way, which is, I think, how a lot of people learn it. That hasn't happened in years and years, but I've only done work with agencies a handful of times, and it's
For that reason, yeah.
Also because that's just I'm not principally a commercial artist. I don't know how to use Photoshop. I don't know how to use Procreate. I'm 46 and I'm a Luddite, and I have been. It's a combination of, it started out me willingly being that way, but really it's because I have a lot of difficulty learning various things. I have learning difficulties, so I haven't made the jump over to digital tools the way that most of the illustration world absolutely, of course, has. And
Does that apply with your music stuff too? Because I know, I had a great conversation. My first recording for the podcast was with my friend, John Michael Rochelle, and he was talking about the DIY aspect of playing music, and looking at the costs of hiring a producer. It's like, I'll just learn it myself. I'll just teach myself how to do this, and becoming more familiar with those digital tools to make recording process easier. Do you explore any digital tools when it comes to playing music, or is it just like I play the music and then it goes and then it becomes an LP?
Yeah, I have my ex-husband had a music studio and is an amazing engineer and producer. I have, for better or for worse, dated people who have played I've never dated anybody in my life except for no, he played something too. Everybody has played music. I've spent an ungodly amount of time in recording studios. I feel that I have a really great production ear. I can talk well and be like, I think the mids need to come down and we need more reverb on that or whatever. Like I hear things, I see the shape of things, and I know how to communicate to an engineer, but do I think that I have the capacity? Not just capacity, do I think that I have the ability to sit down and teach myself logic? No. And that's not me selling myself short, and that's not me saying someone else will do it. It's me. I tried really hard to teach myself Pro Tools. I tried really hard to understand GarageBand, and it just that's not where my skill set is at all. It's like,
Yeah.
It's the ADHD stuff, and not saying that as a blaming, but it was like the framework of what.
Sure.
I just have limitations there, and there are so many incredible engineers and producers. I'm never going to have that be something that I get good enough at to be like, I can make this happen as well as this person or this person, whatever. So
I bought a keyboard like over a year ago because yeah, I played music in high school and in college, and it's been 15 years at this point, and I haven't played music since. And I've been feeling that itch now of like wanting to get back into playing music. And I bought a keyboard, and I was like ready to start like playing on my synth again. But then after I purchased it, I realized I had to learn a program in order to play the keyboard. So I had to learn Ableton. I was like, this is not why I bought this thing. And it's off screen, but it's just collecting dust. And now I'm like, maybe I go even further back. I want to buy a used saxophone and just go totally analog with it. Just like, I'm on the computer all the time for work. I need other creative pursuits that have nothing to do. Because if I'm on like this computer, it is my work computer, it is personal, it is art, it's all the things. And there's so many distractions, and I just want to be able to separate myself from that. And I feel the calling of just like wailing on a woodwind.
Wail on that woodwind, woman. Get it. And I have to say, it has been huge for me on levels I can't even fully comprehend, probably, to get out of my apartment, go to my practice space. Both bands are in the same practice space. It's this great space that I think maybe 15 different bands are in. We have a Google Calendar. It's very well organized. It's really incredible. And just plug in my bass and play bass with my band. And you're making with other people. I pluck the strings. There is a sound. And there's not, my phone is in my bag. Like just having that time doing something that is divorced from divorce from the computer and divorce from that
Yeah.
is amazing. And when we're recording too, the engineer gives me the right cord to plug into my bass. I plug it in, and then I'm being recorded. And I've got cans on, and you're like, okay, great. It's that plus. That's another part of, if I were to, I know in my heart, if I were to start dabbling in digital illustration, I'm on the computer too much. I'm on my screen too much. I'm on my phone too much, and it's that is so different. It's image making.
Can you tell me about like when did you start using these materials? Specifically, what materials are you using? Um, why you like using those materials?
Yeah. I started drawing when I was a little kid. I I think I was first exposed to real, quote unquote, real art supplies, which everything is a real art supply. You can stick a, chopstick in your gas stove, light it on fire. And now you have some charcoal and you can draw with it. You can take grape juice and a Q-tip. Elmer's glue, crayons, it's all real art materials, but stuff you get in an art supply store, let's say in probably junior high, something like that, was when I started getting exposed to a nice actual drawing pencil set or some black wings or what have you. Right now, for the vast majority of my commission paintings and for my book work and my illustration work, I paint in gouache, which is a traditional illustration medium. I started messing around with gouache in 2010. I was in Los Angeles, kind of semi-living in LA for about 3 months or so at a friend of mine's while she was out of the country. And I had a breakup and I wasn't living anywhere. And I was like, maybe this place. And she had gouache at her apartment. And I'd painted with watercolors before, but I hadn't really messed with gouache. And I really fell in love with its opacity and also just the fact that it is a very easy medium. It's water based. It dries right away. So I was attracted to the immediacy of it, and messed around with it a bunch. And then when I apartment living and working in my apartment, it was a really attractive thing, just because of the sort of the economy of it, and then when I started doing illustration work, it was like, well, there's a reason that this is a traditional illustration medium, and I like the history of that. Paint is part of the history of the medium, also is part of the history of illustration generally. And for drawing, I really started getting back into drawing about 4 years ago, and started kind of falling back in love with graphite and charcoal. And that is such a different drawing is such a different process from painting in every possible way. And drawing is also the fundamental thing. Drawing is the architecture under everything. And drawing is a place where you can really grow where you can really see the places the ways in which you need to grow very plainly. And I like that.
Can you elaborate on that?
Yeah. You in painting, a lot of technical form structure issues can be forgiven and hidden or compensated for using paint itself. Can be stylistically, there's a lot more you can do that still communicates what you're trying to communicate using gesture and using the paint. It's a lot easier, I think, to do that with paint than it is with pencil and charcoal. Not that it can't be done there too, but if I'm trying to, in my case, and this is, I'm not speaking generally, but just for my work and my ability, when I make a drawing and I feel like it did not do what I wanted it to do, when I make a drawing and I feel like it's not there, when I make a drawing and there's problems with it that I think are beyond my ability to fix, it's a lot more obvious and it's a lot more dire and it's a lot more this is going in the trash than if I'm coming up against issues in a painting. So in that way, it's having a good drawing practice, having a drawing practice period, is really instructive. It makes you really get real with yourself. Linda Berry, the great genius Linda Berry, said once, it is not up to you how you draw, it is up to you to learn to live with it. And I love that. I got a chance to take a workshop with her a bunch of years ago, and she said that, and I was like, well, we're done here. That's great. I'm going to remember that for the rest of my life. And it's true. For me, it's more demanding. It's more, for me, because of how I approach both things. Drawing is more intimate. It's more, I get way more in the weeds when I draw.
I'm curious. I mean, because you said you started getting back into drawing over the past year or so.
4 years, I would say.
4 years. Okay. I'm so curious, because painting requires such incredible focus and physical stamina. And thinking about your, having gone through life-saving heart surgery last year, thinking about how did you navigate getting back to work through recovery? And was there a ramp up period, focusing more on drawings? It's more intimate. It's smaller in that way versus bigger pieces that require a lot more physical stamina.
I thought a lot, which is really trite and dramatic, about Matisse and Frida Kahlo and whoever. When I, other artists that have made work while they were going through a really serious medical issue. I was thinking about that a lot when I was really laid up. And the first thing that I made on my way back was actually a paper cut collage. And I was like, I can sit down and I can get my scissors, and I have this paper and I have these magazines and I've got this glue, and I don't remember what else I had out, but I was like, I just want to do something to begin to get my brain to talk to my hand again, to get my hand moving again, to get my eyes back. I had a lot of, and still sometimes do, a lot of post-op eye things left over from anesthesia, where I'll see these big like blobs of distortion in my visual field, and it's like
right, because like you were under for how long were you under anesthesia?
6 hours, something like that. It was shorter. It was shorter than it was supposed to be, actually. Which,
Oh wow.
thank God. But
Yeah.
it was like 6 hours, I think. So it sometimes that's, I don't know. I did a whole bunch of acid when I was a kid, so maybe my brain was already predisposed to like have that fuck me up.
This old thing.
Yeah, this whole thing. Oh, that's fun. So but that was the first time I sat down to try and do something. That's what it was, and it was also so much it took a really long time to have the ability to do this again. And for the podcast listeners, I am miming what it is to paint. The motion of painting on a vertical surface requires different muscles and different physical stamina, whatever, than when you're writing on a horizontal surface, or painting on a horizontal surface, or drawing on a horizontal surface. Because with with open heart surgery, all these, all of this stuff is cut. Everything connects to your sternum. Your sternum is cut in half. And it takes a while for those things to grow back together. It takes, when you're in the hospital, like I couldn't open. I was very lucky to have a month, which it wasn't supposed to be a month, but I lived with my dear friend Carol, who's my former mother-in-law. She took me in for like a month. But we realized the first like day or two that I was back, she's in her 70s, I was in my condition. We realized that neither of us had the strength to open a pill bottle. And we were like, shit, we didn't think about this.
No.
Yeah, like I could barely hold the bottle, and let alone, it's something. So it was a road back physically, and anybody who's gone through, I am hardly the only fish in the sea who's been through this. There's a zillion people who have. It takes a while physically, it takes a long time psychologically, and takes a long time energy-wise, to have the energy for anything other than your day-to-day functions. So
basic needs. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, basic need. The first day I was able to stand up in the shower, I was like, oh my God.
But I do want to talk about perseverance here. I mean, thinking about how long of a career you've had, how many twists and turns and pivots, and especially wanting to do so many different things and finding the time to do those, but also the perseverance around being an artist and continuing to do that regardless of how difficult it is, and having to have a part-time job on top of the art that you create, and the perseverance of getting back to it through recovering through surgery. Can you talk a little bit about what perseverance means to you as a person and an artist?
Yeah, I've worked since I was a teenager. But besides the fanzine stuff, I started working when I was 15 years old, and I moved out of the house.
What was your first job?
My first job was McDonald's for one day, and then I quit. I was like, fuck this place. I got a job at a smoothie place in University Village in Houston. and I really wanted to work at Urban Outfitters, which was like a new play. It was when Urban Outfitters was, because they started in Austin. It was when they still sold vintage clothes, like not redone vintage clothes, but it was like, so it was a different thing.
Not a Taylor Swift vinyl shop now.
No. But they didn't hire me because I failed the personality test, which it really cracks me up. I was like, well, what were they looking for? I don't know.
What are you looking for?
I don't know. Not you. Not me. I worked there. I worked at a couple of smoothie places. I worked at Express. I was just trying to find a lot of service. I did service. Yeah. I sold drugs in high school. I was a drug dealer. I was a low-level drug dealer, and I sold acid and X and weed. And so I was entrepreneurial there. That's dark times, but that's what it was. I did all that. And then my first job out of high school, I worked at a publishing company called Plunkett Research, writing research books about industry trends for colleges and libraries. And I was actually the senior writer on 17 different titles. And it was like it was nuts. This dude, we all realized at a certain point that he'd hired, we looked around and we're like, we're all fairly conventionally attractive college-age girls. I see what's going on here.
Clock that.
I worked as a sports writer for an early web publication that was called Kobaki for some reason. That was in like 1998, something like that. And then I moved to Chicago and worked with Jessica Hopper at her company, Hyper PR, then. And that began, I was a street team person for Grand Royal. I did a bunch of stuff, and I would do odd jobs. I would cut people's hair for groceries. But yeah, I moved out of the house when I was 17, and I just have always hustled. And I was on the phone with my dad a couple of months ago, and he was like, you've never asked me for anything ever. And I'm like, that's right. And that's right. That's it. So was
that a value that they instilled in you, or was it just like, I just need to be independent from, you don't owe me anything, I don't owe you anything?
I think there wasn't a conversation about it at all. When I left home, I went on tour with a friend of mine. There was a hardcore band called Injury that was touring up to Chicago.
The most gentle pits ever.
Yeah, and a friend of mine and I went in my car, and I quote unquote wasn't supposed to leave the state, and I called my father from Tulsa, and I was like, I'm going to Chicago, and he was like, I know. And I kind of moved in with a friend of mine who was living at her grandmother's. And then I went to the University of Houston for a few years. And my first semester there, I had a dorm that I only lived in for like not long, for, I don't know, a handful of months. And I had a boyfriend who I moved in with shortly thereafter. And at that time I was 18, 19, something like that. But there was definitely not there were not conversations about money. I just knew I had to make it. And there's a whole other universe of conversations about money lessons, money mistakes. That first day on campus at U of H, where there's the predatory credit card people, giving you a credit card with a $200 limit, and you're like, that's the most money I could ever imagine having is $200.
Yeah.
And then you don't understand how it works, you being me, that kind of stuff. Cause I never had any conversations with anybody about credit card or opening a bank account or any of that stuff. So anyway, my family of origin, there was a lot going on there. So I have hustled, and then I have, at times in my life when I've been in relationships, I was really fortunate in my marriage that my ex did really, really well. And in interviews about being a full-time artist during those years, people would often ask, like, how are you making it? And my answer was that my husband at the time made the money. And so it didn't matter if I had a year where I just made 35 grand. It was okay. Yeah. So the thing of perseverance is both in sort of the long arc of my life, in terms of just the machinations of existing in capitalism, it's been a combo of the good fortune to be in relationships with people over time and space who have made money, and then I've made the money I've made, and it's worked out in the way it's worked out, or I've been on my own and I've been hustling and that's worked out. And so it's just, I've had the experience of living in great luxury and wealth. I've had the experience of being hungry and looking for change on the street to have gas to put in my car. I've had the experience of stealing food. I've had the experience of having like a 17-course dinner. Financially, I've run the gamut, and I think the key to perseverance is that you just you have to. You just have to. And when you're an artist too, in terms of making your art, you just have to. And that have to is like something that I can't. If somebody told me you're never allowed to paint or draw or make music again, I'd be like, well, I'll jump down a hole then. Like, what do you...
It's like to you, it's like being told like you're never able to breathe again or eat. It's like, that's like just like fundamental who you are.
It's just like being told you're no longer allowed to do the things that give your life meaning and purpose and bring you joy and have you, be part of community and be a fully realized, to whatever extent any of us are ever fully realized, at any point in our lives. Being a human with who does stuff like I can't. I always have. So it's kind of almost like some weird like Buddhist cone or something. It's some weird like unanswerable question. Is like, who would you be if you weren't you? No idea. I don't know.
Yeah,
totally no idea. And with all of that and with the trajectory of my life, the way that it's been, I have been very, very lucky to be able to be one of those, a lot of people never, ever, ever make anything from their art. And I make an extremely meager living, but I make a living. And that's enough for me. Like, I am so happy having, peanut butter for dinner, not just because like that's all I can have for dinner. It's not some Oliver Twist shit, but it's because I'm like a raccoon and I'm happy having peanut butter for dinner, aka I don't want for much. You know, I'm thankful for that. I feel very, fortunate.
Like when was that moment, hearing how candidly and passionately you speak about your art just being like it's who you are. It's like it is your passion. It is inextricable from you as a person. Um, do you remember if there was a certain point in your life where you're like, I know this is me now, or is it just kind of like a rolling thing, always present in your life, and then at that point, like the two were always linked?
I really started taking art more seriously as something that was a piece of my life in the early aughts after making friends with a painter named Derek Erdman in Chicago, who is still a dear friend, and I haven't talked with him in a long time, and I should give him a call. But he really encouraged me to keep at it, and it became something that I started to do at that point. And I think I've had periods of time where it's, drawing, painting has ebbed and flowed. For forever, I think, really being a music person and working at record label or having my publicity company was kind of more, if we're talking about like egoic identification of like, this is me. There were times where that was really the forefront of my life. And I also painted and I also did these things. I really got serious about it again, maybe like a little over a decade ago. I want to say I'd had a period of it really not being the forefront. And then it forefronted itself again. At the end of when I was about to retire from the music business, I was doing I started an interior decor business, which is another thing that I just absolutely am a fanatic about, and I will sit and look at interior decor stuff on Instagram forever. And I was doing that, and I was starting to take more commissions and painting again. And I really assumed that the interior decor business would be the lead horse in the race, but it was not. I was making more money selling paintings and doing commissions than I was decorating people's brownstones and offices. And it was a hell of a lot more, it was the dream to have that be the lead horse in the race. And it was at that point that I stopped doing my interiors work and just fully went whole hog into being a full-time artist, which I was until I moved back to New York a couple of years ago, and was very fortunate to get the job that I have now with 200, who I had been involved with previously from the artist side. I was one of the artists that they worked with, and I've known the owner, Jen Beckman, for a long time because we had a mutual friend in the artist, Jason Poland.
Part of this podcast is serving as a resource to potential clients who are looking to commission you, but also to peers and folks that are looking to get into this. And one of the biggest conversations I have when I go to like entrepreneur club meetups or talk with other creatives is, how do you price your work? How did you figure out how to price like physical media in that way?
It was a journey that it's something that as you're experience increases, as your skill increases, as your portfolio increases, so too does your pricing increase. There were a lot of times where clients would say, and it still happens sometimes, clients were like, "Oh, it's only that much? How come it's only that much?" Or I would be talking about pricing to another artist or to just somebody else, and they would be like, "Oh God, you should charge more." And I started when I had my publicity firm, I dealt, I had a many years dealing with pricing also, and pricing out how much a campaign costs, how much this cost, how even booking shows, like how much does this show cost. So I had planned selling zines and whatever. I wasn't new to figuring out how much things cost. And I have always been one to advocate to friends of mine, like, you should charge more. You should be making more for this. So I think there's a combination when pricing your work of factors you have to take into account that are based on the machinations of your own actual practice, of what the labor involved is, what the materials involved are, what the demand on your time is like, there's a whole, and then there's also just generally how much does a mid-sized magazine cover usually pay? How much does a mid-sized record cover usually? How much should you charge for that? What are it's there's so much that kind of goes into it that builds upon a universe of historical factors, and so it's kind of that. And sometimes for repeat clients, I will keep my pricing more stable. Like if my prices have really jumped in the few years between the last time they commissioned me and this time they're approaching me again, I will often quote them something that is more in the middle. I'm thankful for the repeat business, and I also don't want to price them out.
Sure.
And if somebody's coming to me because they had a new baby or they got a new dog or something, I don't want them to not be able to add to the gallery on their wall because I'm charging so much more than I
Sorry,
was.
Fido, you're just not worth it.
Yeah, that's it. So, yeah.
How do you, total pivot here, but I'm curious how you stay inspired and motivated in your work, especially when you have so many different creative pursuits pulling at you.
That is a really good question. I stay inspired. I don't always stay inspired, I guess is the real answer. I don't always stay inspired, and I don't always stay motivated. And I think that is what is actually true for everybody, because we can't always stay inspired and always stay motivated, although we would like to. I think the trick is to always stay inspired, to keep yourself inspired and motivated. I'm always inspired to keep myself inspired. I'm always motivated to keep myself motivated. What that looks like really varies based on what is going on, and am I in burnout? How full is my plate? What has my life been like? The more that I'm out in the world, the less that I'm on my computer, the more inspired and motivated I am. The more I'm around other artists, the more inspired and motivated I am. There are a couple few people where no matter what, talking to them for even a second makes me deeply inspired and deeply motivated. And like, I gotta paint today. I really gotta, or it will get my brain turning, and a million ideas will come to me, or I'll feel filled up and refreshed and renewed. So I think it really is about taking care of yourself and being in community with other people, and going to museums, going to galleries, looking at art, reading books, watching films, going to shows, listening to records. Like, it's really giving yourself the time and space to be taking in the things you want to take in, and surrounding yourself with people who you on some level want to be more like, because I think that's what it is for so many of us. And it's like not something that is necessarily verbalized that way, but when we're inspired by others, there's something where it's like, wait a minute, I want to be that. I want to be like that, and that's beautiful. It's great. So, that, I think.
Yeah. And like all of those things, when I think about all the different creative pursuits you have and all the different ways that you get inspired, all the different methods, like in thinking about ADHD,
Mm.
how do you find the time to do all of those? Are you methodical in like, okay, this week I need to do 3 different inspiration things, or like my Mondays is when I see a friend for coffee, or is it more of like especially with ADHD, like a flow of like, this is how I'm feeling today, and I'm just gonna kinda like let the day move me and see what inspires me?
It's a really good question for right now, because I'm at a moment in my life where I am completely reimagining what I'm kind of like, okay, I've got to really sort of wipe the slate clean and figure out what does work for me. And I've gone through, I just got back a couple of days ago from the first trip I've been on in years, which was amazing. I was gone for a week. Prior to that, I moved I downsized from a large apartment that I'd been really lucky to sublet from a friend to my own small studio, which I'm very lucky to have. And it's rent stabilized. I'm so thankful.
Are we in this right now?
Yeah, we're in this right now. So my this is what's behind me. There's just boxes of stuff. My socks are in a bag. My art supplies are in boxes that say art supplies on them. I have been just like ad hoc trying to. Sorry, this is like a visual roller coaster here.
It's fine. Like a natural Brooklyn earthquake happening. It's good.
Yeah, it's fine. And then prior to that, I unfortunately was in the hospital for a few days for another health event. And the lead up to the move was what the lead up to a move is, where you're getting rid of furniture, you're doing a million things. So with all of those things, and the bands and the job and having, social life, romantic life, all of those things together, we have opportunities in life. Every single day, one can argue when one should argue, but we have opportunities sometimes that are more pronounced to go, okay,
Yeah.
this
is a reset time.
this is reset time. We're going to reimagine this. So I'm really looking forward on this day, Friday, October 24th. I'm really looking forward to getting my physical workspace back in order, and having a routine around that, because that is what works best for me. Is I've had long periods of time where I get up in the morning and I'm painting first thing, and that is the best. That is the best for me. Also, with my job right now, there are synchronous set hours, so that aspect of it is a relatively new thing, and that's a chunk of time that's set. My band practices are set throughout the week. So I've got and with ADHD, everything is on my Google Calendar. My Google Calendar looks like a color coded Tetris game.
Yep.
And it's everything from shower, refill your pills, get groceries, pay this bill, like water your plants. Every single thing, I put it on the calendar, because if it's not on the calendar, it's not going to get done. And if it doesn't get done, it's my fault. For I'm the one I'm taking care of me. I'm in charge of putting stuff on the calendar. I'm in charge of doing the stuff that's on the calendar. So now I've got more on my plate, just because of this move, really. And I'm looking forward to having a more concrete routine.
Yeah.
It's amazing how freeing structure is.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah. And
you don't have to think about it. You don't have to think about, like, when was the last time I ate? When is this going to get done? It's just like, okay, I put in the work. Like, is it like a Sunday night thing where it's like, okay, the week is planned out at this point, and now I don't really need to think about, it's all plug and play at this point.
I think I'm plugging every day, and because I'm always working further out.
Yeah.
I think with book deadlines, and with the band, with job deadlines, and with social things too, and with trying to it can be tricky to gauge our own capacity, and that's something that I'm working on personally, is being better at gauging my own capacity, being better at not reflexively saying yes to things, because I still do that, and it doesn't serve anybody, least of all me. So I think, the work around creating structure for yourself and creating boundaries around that structure is something that is organic and always ongoing. I operate the best when I have a real routine that I am respecting for myself. And what that routine is kind of doesn't matter. It can be a number of things, and has been a number of things throughout the year. But I like the practice of showing up for your art like somebody is making you when nobody's making you.
Yeah, that sense of accountability is so. I mean, when I first went out on my own to work for myself, it's like Oh yeah, I'm the one fully like I'm not accountable. I'm accountable to like my clients, but it's these are deadlines that I have set because I'm in charge of those things and I'm accountable. It's not like I'm accountable to a boss or somebody else telling me when I need to have my butt at my desk. It's no, I'm 100% responsible for these things, and it is terrifying, but it's also really freeing.
Hmm. Yeah, it is. It
Yeah,
is being captain of your own ship. It's a
aye
constant.
aye.
Yeah, that's it. It's a constant learning process. Mm.
Yeah. Any closing thoughts you have that you feel are important to have others understand what it is to be a working professional creative?
That's a good. That's a good question. I think what it is to be a working professional creative person is to really endeavor to stay open, uh, to stay honest with yourself, and let uh, to not let the working part of being a working creative person kill the creative part of being a
Mm,
working person. That's my answer.
that is yeah, that is so hard to do, though.
Oh yeah, for everybody. There's nobody anybody will talk to ever that actually has a way that is proven, time tested, and can be taught. Except for there's an exception, and that exception is if somebody is independently wealthy and then they don't have to worry about the business. They don't have. I guess that's not. So I've just proved and disproved my point. If you're a working creative person who is earning a living from what they do, um, it's part of the wonderful things we learn in life is all the challenges that come with that and all of the benefits that come with that. I mean,
Yeah.
we we choose this. We choose this shit. It's not, even though it feels like it's not a choice. It's a choice.
Yeah.
Like I can go back to Katy, Texas, and work at the smoothie place. Maybe. Okay.
Joan, this has been I mean, when you were talking before about, just spending time with other artists and other people, other creatives, and just, spending 2 minutes with them and feeling inspired. I mean, we have spent over 2 hours together talking, and we have never talked this much together
No,
ever. And this
no.
has just been I feel so inspired and so eternally grateful that you have um, given me so much time today to share your
Oh,
story and to dive into your process and just learning more about the machinations of how you work and your journey traveling from, different cities and different jobs you've had. It's just been, I feel very, very grateful that you have given me so much time today and just shared
thank
so
you.
much wisdom.
Thank you, thank you, thank you. It has been a total joy, and your questions have helped me reorient myself to where I want to be and what I want to be doing at a time of reorientation. So, thank
Oh,
you.
how fortuitous.
Quite, quite indeed.
Wonderful. That was Joan LeMay. What stays with me most was Joan's honesty about her entire journey. The beautiful parts and the really hard parts. She didn't sugarcoat anything, and that's what makes her story so valuable, especially for anybody trying to make a living as a creative professional. Joan talks about having experienced both extremes: great luxury and wealth, being hungry and looking for change on the street. That range of experience and her willingness to be so open about it That's the transparency that we desperately need more of in conversations about creative work. The reality is messy. Most of us are hustling, juggling multiple income streams, trying to figure out how to price our work, and dealing with the fact that art is often a luxury purchase in an economy where people are struggling. The advice she gave at the end really stuck with me, though. Don't let the working part of being a working creative person kill the creative part of being a working creative person. Now, that tension between making a living and making art, that's the struggle so many of us are navigating. And there's no perfect answer, but Joan's approach, staying honest, staying open with yourself, remembering that you're choosing this life even when it's hard, that feels like wisdom I'll carry with me. Another bit of wisdom was Joan's insight on motivation. She said, I'm always motivated to keep myself motivated. That's the real work. It's not about waiting for inspiration to strike. It's about showing up for your practice even when you don't feel like it, creating structure for yourself when nobody is making you, and building community with other artists who are keeping you engaged. If you're in the market to commission a gorgeous portrait, reach out to her directly. You can check the show notes for her links, and she's also in 2 bands right now, Viennetta and Bull Thieves, so take a listen. I'm Sarah Mulligan-Williams. I run Word of Mouth, a creative studio where I partner with mission-driven organizations on branding, design, and content strategy. You can find out more at wordofmouthcreative.co. Thank you so much for listening to Creatives Processing. Check the show notes for how to connect with the show. Until next time, stay human, stay curious.